Hey, Professor, how are you? Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Ronnie and Tyler. My apologies for having to do this by phone and causing you all sorts of technical
Oh, it's okay.
difficulties, but I had them on my own end. Wi-Fi was not being cooperative today, so it's one of those new normal hurdles that we have to get over, I guess.
Look, it happens. We're all good with it.
Right.
But with that, I hope you actually had cable to be able to tune into the proceedings that happened yesterday. What a start to the new year.
Right, boy. We all were hoping that and counting on that 21 would be better than 20, and boy, that is not the case so far, at least in terms of politics.
So, if we can just start off maybe with the things that unfolded at the nation's capital yesterday. I always love your perspective because the one thing I wonder about is he has less than a week in office. So by the time the issue gets to the Senate to be able to take a vote, he's already going to be out of office. So why even do this?
Well, I think that's a fair question, and I think for this conversation, we have to go back to the events of January 6th, and I think that the riot that occurred on Capitol Hill, frankly, shook the political landscape in America like it hasn't been for a long, long time, and I think that obviously that's what started us on this path. And I think even then you saw very quickly Republicans and Democrats in a rare moment of agreement condemn and blast and just repudiate what happened in terms of the rioters. Somebody who spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill and having worked there for a bit, I that place is sacred to many in U.S. politics, and it was desecrated. And I think that's what pushed for this next impeachment to happen, obviously. And then we start to get further and further removed from it, and then what we see is our elected officials move into their partisan corners again. And you end up with sort of where we're at today with the vote yesterday. 10 Republicans cross over and vote to impeach Donald Trump. The rest of them vote against it. You do have individuals like Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader, say that he accused the president of inciting that riot. But he didn't want to vote to impeach him. So so maybe some of them are caught in the middle somehow. But we're back in our partisan corners, and as you noted, right, the Senate's not going to take it up until at least January 19th, the day before the president leaves office. So, and I think you're going to see at that point a lot of Americans say, "Well, what the heck are we doing? He's gone. That's what we wanted in the first place, and let's get on to the real, not the." Let's get on to the next problem in the country.
Because we have to remember we are still in the middle of a pandemic. There is a crisis that is ongoing. People are going hungry. They're being evicted from their homes. They are losing their jobs. They are losing their businesses. And so for some people, they may argue this is taking away from the focus of trying to get our country back on the right track.
I think you'll see those kinds of calls very quickly after the Senate takes up this impeachment in later in January, and I think it's a fair point. I think that what occurred on January 6th was so terrible that I think it's defensible to make the other argument that, hey, look, this was so bad we have to finish the job of this impeachment. But then it'll be even more interesting to see if more Republicans come out against. Actually, the other way, if more Republicans come out for conviction in the Senate, which could, at the end of the day, lead to Donald Trump being barred from running for office again.
So is that really what this is about right now?
It very well might be, and I think, in some sense, frankly, that might be a blessing in disguise for Republicans.
I really wonder what is going to be the future of the Republican Party, because even within the party, we are seeing breaks. Can they come together to be stronger coming out of the Trump administration?
Right. I think that the Republican Party faces a fork in the road. And do they continue with, do they continue to forge ahead with the Trump way, right? Which did take the party in a different direction from early in the 2000s for sure. Think about the time of maybe the George W. Bush presidency. It's very, very different in many ways. Or do the Republicans take a different path and return to, what I'll call more quote unquote normal Republican times or more Republican orthodoxy on some issues and in terms of maybe the way that they campaign and the rhetoric that's used. I think we won't know that for a while. And I think that there's going to be a lot of internal fighting among the Republicans. But let's be honest about it. Anytime there's an election and somebody loses, it would be wise for that party to do some self-reflection and to look at what happened and why and what they need to do to change. And I'd also say too that you are completely correct that Republicans are fractured. But let's not pretend that the Democrats are united, right? I mean, there are serious divisions within the Democratic Party, mainly from the progressive left and the more sort of mainstream, or and that's probably not a fair term, but I just blanked on the word.
That's okay. It happens to all of us.
The establishment wing of the party, right? And that division is going to be front and center as Democrats try to govern in late January, early February, maybe through the first 100 days of the Biden administration. There are going to be those divisions within the Democratic Party are going to be on display as they try to work through the Biden legislative agenda and get into details of how major issues are going to be tackled in this country. So, I think we need to take stock of everybody at this point.
I think the next few months are going to be very interesting because for the past 4 years, we've heard the Democrats blame so many issues on the Republicans and President Trump. And now that they don't have him to point the finger to, how is it going to change if they can't fix some of these issues within our country?
Well, I think whether he's president or not, whether he can run for office again or not, Democrats will continue to point the finger at Donald Trump. Now, how long that remains effective, I think, remains to be seen. But you bring up a good point. It's for a year or so. It's been Donald Trump's fault on the pandemic. Well, now that the Democrats are in charge of everything, they've got to fix it, right? If they've got ideas, then they need to take control and change things. I think you see some of the rhetoric, maybe from the campaign, that is starting already to be walked back in terms of how many people might be vaccinated in the first 100 days, right? That's proving more difficult. Is that anybody's fault? I'm no expert, right? I'm certainly no public health official or knowledgeable on that, but I just think that when you're talking about the number of vaccinations that need to be done in a country as big as this one, it's hard, right? And there are difficulties that pop up. So everybody might just be finding out how difficult it's going to be to get through this.
And with that, I also wonder, because of the division within both parties, is this the time that we're going to see a third party start to merge. I caught the 60 Minutes interview this past Sunday with Angus King, who is an independent, and he had some good arguments on both sides of the coin. So is this a time that maybe some of the independents or a third party grows out of this crisis and where we are right now as a nation?
Well, I guess I would look at it this way. You know, we have this effective two-party system. Not that it's effective. In effect, we have a two-party system. And I say that because there are other parties out there. Green Party, Libertarian Party, National Taxpayers Party, right? There's the Socialists. There's a bunch of them. But Republicans and Democrats are the only ones that generally win national elections at the federal level. And that's because of any number of reasons. So we'll put those aside for the minute. But if the U.S. is right now a 50-50 country, right? I mean, for all intents and purposes, we're pretty evenly divided. Joe Biden wins the presidency in the popular vote by a handful of points, right? That doesn't take away from the fact that a large number of people voted for Donald Trump. 74 million people voted for Donald Trump. So we're pretty much split. Now, if the Republicans splinter, and one segment of the party says, we're out of here, we're going to start our own party. Well, what they've done is hand the presidency and federal elections to the Democrats for the foreseeable future. And I think that there are folks in the GOP that know that and realize that, and they'll try to prevent that from happening, simply to try to protect some of the power that they do have in the states and in local elections, et cetera. So, I am very skeptical that a third party will form and be successful.
So we all watched as a nation in disbelief when these events were unfolding a week ago in DC. What's the long-term impact for the state of Michigan?
Oh gosh. For the state of Michigan. Well,
many times these issues play out in DC, but they do trickle down into our own backyards.
They do, and I think you're seeing some reports in the last few days that the federal law enforcement is concerned that we might see some other protests in state capitals. So it could happen. I'm not saying that not a riot, but you could see protests in Lansing. You could see gatherings of Trump supporters in Lansing and in other places. So I think we just have to be on the lookout for stuff.
So one of the things yesterday, if we can go back to the hearings yesterday, that some of the Republicans actually brought up, there were very few that actually stood in defense of the president and his actions. However, they did bring up the argument that so many Democrats sat on the sidelines this past summer while the country was in the middle of so many different riots and businesses were being burned and being looted, and they sat back and did nothing. Was that a valid argument for them to have in the middle of an impeachment hearing?
I like to examine events on their own merits. And I think that what happened at the Capitol was despicable and shameful. And I think that but I think it's natural for some to look back to the summer and see parallels, right? Where police stations, other government buildings were also attacked, right? And I think that again, if we're being honest about it, we have to, if we're going to repudiate what happened in Washington as political violence and how awful it was, I think we should repudiate all political violence.
I will say I am completely surprised at how many people in the Capitol did not seem to care about the repercussions of their actions. They were taking selfies, selfies and pictures and live streaming. And the entire time I was thinking, they're coming after you. You
Yeah,
cannot
absolutely.
sit in the seat of Nancy Pelosi's desk and take a picture and not expect that you're going to be charged with some type of crime coming out of that.
I couldn't agree more. I think that it was, I don't know if it was, if they were just caught up in the moment or they don't care or they didn't know, but you're right. I mean, you're going to get caught these days, right? If your face is on Facebook or Twitter or any kind of social media, let alone in the press, right? I mean, where those pictures were circulated, law enforcement's going to find you. And these folks are getting charged, as they should. If they broke the law, you get charged.
Yeah, I was involved in the riots in Cleveland this past summer, and I think within 15 minutes, friends of my law enforcement community had the guy ID'd. And so nothing ever happened to him. And that's the sad thing about all of this is, sometimes the same effort and attention is not made to some of the other incidents. And I think that's kind of what gets people going in these situations. But it was just unbelievable to watch what happened last week in the nation's capital. And I will say, I'm still so astounded that law enforcement wasn't more prepared because the threat was out there.
Well, and I think you're going to see, and maybe this is we'll see another rare instance of bipartisan cooperation, but I think you're going to see an investigation, a very thorough investigation of what happened and why law enforcement wasn't prepared. There's a few things start to leak out, whether or not the National Guard was going to be permitted to come, and there's some questions about the sergeants at arms in the House and the Senate, and whether or not they put a kibosh on the National Guard coming prior to the demonstrations that turned into the riot. And I think all of it's going to come out, and I think we're going to get a good explanation. Unfortunately, it's too little, too late.
Right. Dave Dulio with us here on the MegaCast. He's the professor of political science and the director of the Center for Civic Engagement over at Oakland University. We always appreciate and enjoy your perspective on so many things that are going on right now. And I would like to have thought that 2021 was going to be a little bit slower for you, but it doesn't look so. Your predictions for Inauguration Day?
Oh gosh, no predictions, but I'll say a hope. I hope that it goes smoothly. I think that we have seen a peaceful transition of power in the United States since the country began, and now there might be some that argue that that's already tarnished, and that might be the case. But I sure hope that I sure hope we don't see a repeat. I think that. It's tough to lose an election. It's tough to see your candidate not come out on top. It's tough to see the other side celebrate and start to govern. But, we've had elections for over 200 years, and everybody's always gotten over it. I think it's time folks need to take a step back. Think about rhetoric that's being used, and this is on both sides. Think about rhetoric that's being used against Republicans, not necessarily those that were involved in the riot or anything like that, but against Republicans who are just everyday folks walking down the street. They're being tarnished by this as well. And is that fair? I think that's a good question. So rhetoric on both sides needs to be ratcheted way down and allow us to move forward and try to address those big issues that you mentioned just a bit ago, certainly related to the pandemic and other big issues that are out there, right? The fact that all this is happening doesn't mean that there aren't major issues and huge things that we've got to figure out how to address in the United States.
And let's hope that it also starts to open up the lines of communication and we can see some cooperation and compromise between the two parties going forward as well.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Oh my gosh, we all deserve it. In 2021, American people deserve it after everything we've been through, right?
Absolutely.
Dave Dulio, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be speaking with you again rather soon. And I hope you get your internet up and running.
Thanks very much.